Okay, we just covered participant observation as the most important ethnographic method, but there are other methods as well, and these can be built into participant observation, and these methods can be combined and used together, so on and so forth. Another method is interviewing. Ethnographers must be consistently engaged in interviews throughout their research. These conversations can take two approaches, informal or formal. An informal interview is an unstructured, open-ended conversation in everyday life. A formal interview will have structured questions, a Q&A session, carefully notated as it occurs and based on prepared questions. A questionnaire might, by an everyday person, be interchangeably used like survey, but those are two different things. A questionnaire is a form used by sociologists and sometimes anthropologists and any other social scientists to obtain comparable information from respondents. Questionnaire procedures tend to be more impersonal, and oftentimes the respondent will fill out the form. This research involves sampling, which means choosing a small manageable group that is representative of the entire population. Mapping is another method. Even today, there are remote places that don't have complete maps. So here I tell a little bit of a story about how when I was doing some field work as a student in a very rural, a very small village in Jamaica, there was no official map of the community, believe it or not. We had to use an old-fashioned handheld GPS to make a map. Later on, geographic information systems became more widely used, and I was able to use a system such as that through my university to make a map. So GIS is much more complicated than GPS. It's more like integrating data into maps. So GIS it's not just a map, but it's a map with different data, different layers, and it's much more complicated than your standard map, but it can hold more information as well. Ethnohistory is another method. It's a study of culture through historic documents. Examples of historic documents include written accounts of oral histories, explorers' records, probate documents, which are like wills, inventories, and birth and death records. So as an anthropologist, if you're studying people who have historic records, sometimes they do have historic records and sometimes they don't, but you can study as many of those as possible to get more information about the society that you are learning about. All right, so we just talked about a bunch of methods, and we're in the steps of ethnography here. So let's say you've chosen your methods and completed your data collection. Upon completion of the data collection in the field and in the archives, the ethnographer must begin to piece together their information. Written ethnographies are more traditional, but certainly not the only method to document the data. So a written ethnography can be like a book or an article. Traditionally, ethnographies are structured as books with chapters such as background, environment, settlement, subsistence, kinship, economy, and even more like religion, marriage, other aspects of superstructure that I haven't mentioned, maybe traditional healing or something like that. So that's kind of what an outline of a traditional ethnography would look like. Additional ethnography is the use of digital technologies for the collection, analysis, and representation of ethnographic data. It might seem hard to imagine, but digital cameras haven't always been as prominent as they are now. I remember when anthropologists were just starting to use them and get better, quality images with their digital cameras. So digital and video methods can be used to create ethnographies as well. And in this class, you'll see a lot of video ethnographies or ethnographic documentaries. All right, to summarize, anthropologists carry out many different methods in order to do ethnography. Many methods involve fieldwork and a lot of talking with people in the community of study. With ethnographic data from many cultures, anthropologists do ethnology and formulate anthropological theories, which we're not going to talk about a lot in this class. This class is mostly going to be about studying different cultures and learning about them, not as much with comparing or formulating theories. But let's just summarize really quickly that the ethnology is a comparison of across cultures using this ethnographic data to formulate theories. So to review, ethnographies are largely descriptive and they provide the data for ethnology. As stated in the earlier part of the class, the end product of anthropology should be an explanatory framework for understanding humanity. Such an explanation or interpretation supported by a reliable body of data can be called a theory. Another way to explain theory in anthropology is that it is a critically examined explanation of observed reality. So in part 3 of the lesson, we're going to talk more about anthropological theories.